Over the past few years, I have beaten Baldur's Gate 3 more times than I can count, which granted isn't that high, but I think it's fair to say that it is time for me to share some of the fun. So similar to TV crossover episodes from my childhood like the Jimmy Timmy Power Hour or the That's So Sweet Life of Hannah Montana episode, I am going to take some of my favorite characters from different video game franchises and drop them into the place of where the player character would normally be in Baldur's Gate 3. Then I will go over what I think their time in Faerun would look like, and how they would fit into the D&D and Baldur's Gate 3 sort of character system by assigning them a background, a class, subclass, all that good stuff. And also comments are apparently really important in today's algorithm, so leave a comment and let me know what Baldur's Gate 3 character you think you would get along best with. Doesn't even have to be a companion, just any character. If you think you'd get along with Wolverine, well, you should actually leave me alone then. But after a word from today's sponsor, we will get started. Real quick, I would like to thank Patrick Adair Designs for sponsoring today's video. They sent me one of their rings and it's so cool that I feel like it should be giving me the ability to throw fireballs or something. It's awesome. Patrick Adair Designs creates handcrafted rings, pendants, and bracelets using neat and unusual materials like meteorite, glowstone, and even dinosaur bone. And these pieces aren't mass produced, so each one feels like it has its own story, and you can even customize plenty of them with personal engravings. If you're looking to get a ring but aren't sure what your size is, no worries, because you can request a free sizing kit before your ring even gets made, and they offer a perfect fit guarantee as well as a lifetime warranty. Right now is a great time to check them out because they are running a summer sale, and across the entire site, items are buy one get one free. And you can mix and match this deal with different products or designs, so you aren't just limited to getting two of the same thing. Frankly, this is an insanely good deal. No percentages off with a long code or anything. It is straight up just buy one get one free, and you can take full advantage of this sale by clicking my link in the description or scanning the QR code you see on screen. Thank you to Patrick Adair Designs for supporting the channel. Now let's get back to the video. So I think a good place to start for this video is with one of my all-time favorite video game protagonists, the rootinest, tootinest cowboy to ever do it, Arthur Morgan from Red Dead Redemption 2. What I'm gonna do for each character is select a very specific point in time from their game to pull them from, so that we have a very clear frame of reference for what their current disposition is. Some characters, from the start of the game to the end of their game, are very different people, and Arthur Morgan is a great example of that. And actually, I think a good place to start with Arthur specifically is kind of with the end of his story. Now, quick spoiler warning, I am going to go over the end of Red Dead Redemption 2, so if you would like to avoid that, I'll put a timestamp on screen to where you can jump a little bit and you should be safe from any major spoilers, but I'll also put a timestamp on screen if you want to just move to the next character just to be safe. But getting into it, like I said a moment ago, I think the optimal place to take Arthur from is at the very end of his game. There are technically 4 endings to Red Dead 2, but the one that I, and I think most others, prefer is the ending where Arthur chooses to help out his pal John Marston, and he also does so with high honor. Without getting too into the honor system and all that, in this ending, Arthur has been beaten and battered, not just in the literal sense, but also by the classic cowboy killer tuberculosis. The combination of his injuries and disease end up taking his life while he stares off at the rising sun. But what if, while staring at that very sunrise, he saw something he had to assume was a hallucination, the Nautiloid? In the intro cutscene to Baldur's Gate 3, we see the Nautiloid jumping around from realm to realm, place to place, so who's to say that, at least just for the sake of our story today, that the Nautiloid doesn't pop back into 1899 and pull Arthur from the cliffside? Now, obviously the major problem here is that he is moments away from death. But with a combination of using one of those little healing pod things on the ship and also the Mind Flayer tadpole, which we have seen do some pretty remarkable stuff, like completely negating the effects of being a vampire for Astarion. But my point is, with these things, I think it's possible to say Arthur Morgan, he's not gonna be fine when this is over, but he should be able to buy himself a little bit of time. Regardless of how he gets here, Arthur Morgan is now aboard the Nautiloid and is infected with a Mind Flayer tadpole. Now, before we get into any of the actual story elements of this adventure, let's break down some logistics. First of all, this is roughly how I would assign his stats, while staying within the actual system of Baldur's Gate 3. He's got decent strength and constitution, given he's a pretty tough guy. A little more wisdom than average, considering, he's had quite a crazy life. Average intelligence and charisma, and then where he really shines is with his dexterity. He's got some of the quickest hands to ever touch a 6-shooter, so dex obviously has to be his primary stat. His race, of course, is human. He's got normal movement speed and no natural resistances. And then the background that I think makes the most sense for him is the criminal. While I do like the Outlander background for him as well, I think that background has a bit too much focus on living outdoors and communing with nature, and while he does do those things, it's not exactly as essential to his character as his troubled past is. But now for the really fun part. Well, for me at least, his class and his subclass. Well, I think it's pretty safe to eliminate any class that deals with magic. Arthur is a talented fellow, and I wouldn't even deem him like a slow learner or anything like that, but I also think that he would have no interest in magic. Being transported to this world would be enough of a fustercluck for him, and throwing the task of learning how to use magic on top of that would likely be too much for most normal people. He's talented but simple, and the class that I think would best reward those things, as well as go along with some unique character traits and abilities I've given him, is the most simple class-subclass combination of them all, the Champion Fighter. The other classes I considered for him were the Hunter and Gloomstalker Ranger subclasses, but the Ranger class is inherently magical. They have cantrips, spells, and rely on a decent wisdom ability score. And yes, I did give him a little higher wisdom than normal, but I still think that the Ranger class just doesn't really fit him. And I also considered the Arcane Archer subclass because, while it is magic adjacent, it doesn't really require a high specific mental ability score to function properly. But let me just get into the traits I've given Arthur to make him feel more like himself, and then I think the Champion subclass will start to make a little more sense. First of all, I have come up with a passive ability for Arthur called Headshot. Essentially what this does is strengthen his critical hits. When Arthur lands a critical hit with a ranged weapon attack on an enemy, they gain the dazed condition for the next 3 turns. Being dazed isn't nearly as bad as being paralyzed, incapacitated, or slept, but it still isn't ideal. I think this is a good way to reward Arthur's incredible talent with ranged weapons without making him too overpowered. Another talent of his that we need to discuss is his Deadeye ability. In the Red Dead games, Arthur and John have the ability to basically slow time to more effectively line up their attacks. Well, to be clear, they're not really slowing time down, they're just perceiving time much faster, which makes everything seem slower. To represent this ability in-game, I would give Arthur a unique resource that gives him a small pool of extra attacks that he can spend on ranged attacks when he needs them. But the thing is, once he uses them, he needs a long rest before he can use them again. So sure, maybe if he gets in a tough spot, he can use his Deadeye ability to just mag dump on a horde of weaker enemies, but then he can't do that again until he's had a break. Yes, this would absolutely be a broken resource for the player to use because we're aware of the resting system and that this is a video game, but Arthur is not an honor mode build optimizing machine, so I'm not worried about this becoming too overpowered for him. Now, while my favorite part of this video is going to be discussing classes and traits and stuff like that, I think plenty of you are excited to hear how I think that the characters would interact with the other people in Baldur's Gate 3. So let's get into that. There are a few simple questions I will ask to sort of cover the whole of their experience in Baldur's Gate 3. Now, first of all, because it's one of the first things the player does when they play the game, we need to know what Arthur's guardian would be. Well, I would assume that the Emperor would keep things pretty simple for Arthur and take the form of a kind-looking human woman. I say human specifically because I think that with all the craziness going on, Arthur would likely find the most comfort in another normal human being, and I say woman because it seems like throughout Red Dead 2, Arthur has the easiest time opening up and discussing his true thoughts and feelings with some of the women he encounters. It's a very, masculine society sort of time period. The next question I would like to cover then is which companions do I think Arthur would get along with? Well, I think every character will have a bit of an easier time trusting Lae'zel considering she is the first person you meet in your playthrough, and actually I think these two would get along fairly well, but the thing thing is, Lae'zel, at the start of the game at least, might be a bad influence on Arthur, who is really doing his best to be a decent person. That being said, they both have a pretty serious demeanor about them, and that might keep them from annoying each other. And then, as far as Shadowheart goes, I love her to death, but it is unfortunately true that she is not really an easy person to get along with at first. She's very closed off and can feel kind of like a bratty teenager at times, and I don't really see Arthur having a whole lot of patience for that, and I feel kind of similarly about him and Astarion. Although I could see Astarion falling for Arthur's rugged cowboy charm. That's very possible. Will and Karlach are two peas in a pod, and I think I will judge them together because of that, and I can almost guarantee that Arthur would be a little put off by the sort of devilry going on between these two, but Arthur is also a man who generally sees things for what they are. Well, except for maybe with Dutch, but I think that's kind of the exception. Even though Karlach looks like a scary devilish creature, I think Arthur could pretty easily come to trust her when he sees that she's actually a very good person. Same with Will. In fact, I actually think these two would get along very well. Will is mature, he's confident, and he'd kind of be the complete opposite to Lae'zel. He would be a good influence on Arthur. Though to be fair, I think the youthful energy from Karlach and Will might be a little much for him eventually, but he'll be alright. Another good influence, of course, would be Gale. And while I think Gale can be a little off-putting as well, I could totally see him and Arthur sitting around the campfire at night, and Gale just lore dumping about Faerun and magic and answering the billions of questions that must be swimming through Arthur's head. Swimming through his head right alongside that tadpole. As for Halsin, Jaheira, and Minsk, I'll sort of lump them all together and say that I think Arthur gets along with them for the most part, although I think that Jaheira might have a bit of a crush on him because, well, you know, listen to him. It would be hard not to. And if he could somehow pull Minthara away from her evilness, then, you know, maybe they could get along. But the characters in the game don't really have this meta view of, like, knock her unconscious and then she can be a companion later. So I have no real reason to believe that that would work out. But then the only question left for us to discuss is a very important one. Do I think Arthur could succeed in what becomes the ultimate mission of the game, stopping the Netherbrain and preventing the Illithid Empire from taking over the world? Well, unfortunately, to answer this question with any real depth, I need to talk about the end of Red Dead 2 once again, so I'll throw another timestamp on screen if you'd like to cut right to my short answer at the end of this section to avoid spoilers. For the rest of you, I think we need to keep something in mind, and that is that Arthur is being kept alive by the Mind Flayer tadpole in this scenario, and that means his time is very limited, and he is almost definitely 100% aware of that. In fact, I'm sure it's something he'd discuss eventually with his guardian, because, you know, the Emperor should be able to see that he's, well, he's got the black lung. And I'm sure the Emperor would know that Arthur wants to be a better person, and he would likely push Arthur to defeat the Netherbrain, even if that means sacrificing himself in the process. And to be honest, I think that's exactly what would happen, especially because we are taking Arthur from the end of Red Dead 2, and Arthur who basically threw away what little time he had left to help John and his family. So now that he does have a little more time, I think with that time, he would help the entire universe by stopping the Netherbrain. And to give a short, spoiler-free answer for those who skipped forward, yes, I think Arthur would ultimately succeed. Arthur Morgan is easily one of my favorite, and I'd argue one of the all-time greatest video game protagonists of all time, and it would be really fun and cool to see him in this world where things are so crazy and different from what he's used to. Another character I think most of us would deem to be fairly simple is the best boy in green, the boy who shreds on the ocarina, the hero of time, Link. Now to be clear, I do specifically mean the version of Link from The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. I'm picking this particular version because A, I like that game the most, and B, because the majority of my viewers are my age or older, and I think that this is likely the version most of you prefer, or at least generally like. But just like we did with Arthur, we need to establish what specific point in time to grab Link from. And I guess here's a spoiler alert for like a 30-year-old game. Well, there's two specific moments in Ocarina of Time that I consider to pull Link from. There is when he first pulls the Master Sword and enters the Sacred Realm, and then there's also the moment at the end of the game where he is sent back in time to prevent the terrible events from his game. And while Link at the very end of his game may be more powerful and such, I think the more interesting version of this story is going to be taking him from when he he first enters the Sacred Realm and draws the Master Sword and all that. So getting more specifically into that moment, Link enters the Temple of Time, draws the Master Sword, and then he is immediately placed in a sort of suspended animation inside the Sacred Realm while his body grows old enough for him to be capable of being the hero of time. 7 whole years pass and he wakes up in the Sacred Realm with no memory of those 7 years. But what if instead of waking up in the Sacred Realm, he wakes up in the Nautiloid? Now look, we don't really need to do the mental gymnastics of getting him here, but let's just say for the sake of time and my sanity, Link is here in Faerun and he has been infected with a Mind Flayer tadpole. So first things first, here's how I have laid out Link's stats. Now showing you this likely spoils what class I've given him, but frankly, I don't think it was going to be that much of a shock anyway. I did make him a half high elf considering he's a Hylian who are, I don't know, they're very elf-like in appearance and overall vibe, which technically I probably shouldn't do that because, you know, Hylians are still humans, they're not half elves, but I just thought it was more fun. I don't know, trying to mix things up as much as I can. And the cantrip that made the most sense for me is to give him dancing lights, and maybe they kind of look like Navi. Oh, and I should probably touch on Navi as well. I don't think that she would come with him here. The thing is, when the Nautiloid seems to grab people, it takes them and what they are, you know, immediately wearing or touching or wielding if it's a weapon or something like that. And while Navi was placed in that same sort of stasis right alongside Link for those 7 years in the Sacred Realm, I don't know if, you know, what is she sitting on his shoulder or something? Like, it's very possible that they are together, but there's another character, spoiler, coming later in this video that will sort of have a companion, and I'll save that sort of trope for later. But onto his class, like I said, the stats might have given it away, but I think the class that makes the most sense for our hero is the Paladin class. Unlike Arthur, who lives in our universe, Link's world isn't devoid of magic in the same way, so while he may not be particularly magic inclined, I have no doubt that he would take to certain types of magic much easier than most. As far as his oath goes, this was pretty simple of a choice to me, the Oath of Devotion. Sure, you could argue Link's connection to the Great Deku Tree and the Kokiri Forest might make the Oath of Ancients more appropriate, or even that his connection to Princess Zelda and Hyrule might make you think of the Oath of the Crown, but the tenets of the Oath of Devotion could literally not be more perfect for Link. Courage, compassion, and duty. Courage, compassion, and duty. Those 3 things, especially courage, are like the 3 exact words you would use to describe Link's character as a whole. Like I said, it is literally perfect. I'd also like to throw in a small multi-class, so that Link can gain the advantages of the Arcane Archer subclass. A classic feature in damn near every Legend of Zelda game is the different types of arrows that Link can use. It's an incredibly iconic and important part of his arsenal, so I think that sacrificing 3 levels to be able to obtain some powerful ranged options is a small price to pay for keeping things accurate. What Link's Guardian would be like is definitely up for debate, but what makes the most sense to me personally is someone with a similar look and vibe to Saria. Saria is like Link's only friend in Kokiri, and so I think if the Emperor wanted Link to feel immediately comforted by his presence, then a Kokiri form would likely put Link at more ease than the form of, say, like Zelda, because Link doesn't really know Zelda that well yet at this point, and her popping up here might genuinely just make him nervous. The Emperor could also try to look like the Great Deku Tree, but I feel like we're kind of pushing it with that. And while Link may be new to this world and may be unfamiliar with his surroundings and situation, Link didn't come empty-handed. There are 2 specific things Link brings along with him. The first thing is the Master Sword. Now, I wanted the Master Sword to feel special because, you know, it is, and I think I've found a way to do that without making it overpowered. The Master Sword, in this case at least, is a normal +1 longsword. However, if Link uses it to slay a creature of the undead or fiend type, then for the next minute, or 10 turns, the sword becomes a +2 longsword. This can apply one more time, making it a +3 longsword, and if it reaches this level, then it also deals an additional 1d10 radiant damage to its attacks. Though, again, this only is against the undead or fiend type creatures, and this effect also only lasts 10 turns. This should let the sword be powerful and feel like a legendary weapon, especially when being used against, you know, creatures that are typically considered to be of the evil inclination, without it being too strong outside of the situations I have described. Link also comes with the Triforce of Courage, which which he may not even be totally aware of. Nobody's really had the chance to explain that to him yet. For its purpose in Baldur's Gate 3, I've given it a few perks that I think represent its power pretty well. The Aura of Courage prevents those affected by it from being affected by the frightened condition. But to make it really feel like the powerful and magical artifact that it is, I'm also going to double the Aura of Courage's range and add in an immunity to the charmed condition as well. And then one more advantage that I think is appropriate for the Triforce of Courage is to give it an ability that we see take effect when Link goes into the final battle against Ganondorf. If you enter this fight and are missing any hearts, then they will automatically refill. Now, it would be completely and utterly unfair to refill his health at the beginning of every combat. Not gonna do that. But I think giving it a trait similar to the Relentless Endurance trait might work in a similar way without being too insane. But that was a lot of information, and we haven't even yet gotten into what Link's time in Faerun would be like. But to be totally honest with you, I don't think there's that much to say. I mean, as far as companions go, it would actually be pretty cool to see the Hero of Time and the Blade of Frontiers paired up together. That'd be fun. But somebody who I think might kind of be an underdog in the liking Link competition would be Shadowheart. Shadowheart constantly is telling you to stop fucking talking to her. And so, hey, if she can have an ally that literally doesn't talk, that's probably perfect for her. But yeah, man, I mean, Link absolutely crushes this game. Like, it's just kind of what he was made for. None of the Chosen of the Dead 3 hold a candle to Ganondorf, in my opinion, and if Ganon couldn't beat Link, then what fucking chance do these dorks have? But that begs a potentially more interesting question, doesn't it? I mean, what if instead of Link taking the place of the Baldur's Gate 3 player character, we instead sent the villain of Ocarina of Time, the Demon King Ganondorf? To tell you the truth, what you are about to hear is actually my third attempt at writing an entry for Ganon. Oh yeah, I'm gonna use Ganon and Ganondorf interchangeably. If that annoys you, well, then you're a Ganon dork. My previous two attempts have ended up being messy and incoherent ramblings. You see, the thing I've had so much trouble with for Ganondorf isn't where or when to pull him from. We'll simply take him from pretty much the exact same time we stole Link. And it isn't how Ganon would affect the world of Baldur's Gate 3. In fact, I've got some pretty insane ideas on what could happen here. The major problem I'm having is definitively choosing a class and subclass combination for him. So before we get into any stats or anything of that sort, let's actually begin right away with breaking down what classes don't work for Ganon, and then I'll share with you all the half-brilliant and half-ridiculous solution that I've settled on. Go ahead and make your best guess right now, because I can almost guarantee you that it is not where I ended up. Into the mess, though, there were 5 classes I originally considered for Ganondorf. Either the Blade Singing or Evocation Wizard, the Shadow Magic Sorcerer, the Hexblade Warlock, the Eldritch Knight Fighter, and the Oathbreaker Paladin. None of these felt totally right to me. Starting with the Wizard and Sorcerer classes, neither of these offer the durability or overall physicality that I think Ganon should be capable of. Now, while we don't see Ganondorf swinging a sword in Ocarina of Time like we do in some of the other Zelda games, presumably, if he were to start running low on magic, he'd have to resort to physical fighting, and we know for a fact that he can take some serious damage before being pushed beyond his limits. So he should be capable of physical fighting. So while these classes offer the firepower and potential flavor that I'm looking for, the balance is all off. The Oathbreaker seemed like an enticing option to me for a time, as we actually see Ganon bend a knee to the King of Hyrule, which could definitely be seen as him making an Oath of the Crown, which he could then break to become an Oathbreaker, but the problem there should be pretty obvious. The oath that a paladin makes is a sacred bond, a belief and feeling so powerful that it literally channels divine sorts of powers. That is not at all what we see Ganondorf doing when he is sucking up to the king. He's just trying to gain a political advantage. This pledge, this oath, it means nothing. But moving on, the Hexblade Warlock, in function alone, works really well for Ganon. You can build a Hexblade to be fairly tanky and strong, you get access to a good balance of dark, offensive, and proper thematic spells, and the Hexblade even gets to summon an Accursed Spectre, which immediately invokes memories of Phantom Ganon. But the problem here, like with the Oathbreaker, is just too glaring to ignore. While it fits functionally, it does not fit logistically. A Warlock in D&D, and by proxy Baldur's Gate 3, is not just someone who practices dark magic. They are somebody who has made a specific pact with a patron, and that patron offers them access to a pool of their power. In one of my earlier iterations of this script, I really tried to twist Demise into being Ganon's patron, given that, with some hindsight of course, we know that the Triforce trio are only being reincarnated time and time again because of Demise's curse, but let's be honest, that explanation kinda sucks, it doesn't make much sense, and the whole patron thing is kinda non-negotiable when it comes to D&D, so I can't just ignore that. So we can cross off the Warlock. And then that leaves me with the Eldritch Knight Fighter, and to be fair, this is likely the class that I should pick. But Arthur was a fighter, Link has a fighter multi-class, and I'm gonna talk about fighters and their subclasses more later on, so it doesn't feel right to choose that for Ganon, and it isn't the perfect choice anyways. Sure, it's physical and has some magic options, but the Demon King is no slouch. He shouldn't be limited to only casting second level spells when he eventually reaches level 12. That just doesn't sit right with me. But okay, then what? Well folks, it wasn't until I was actually editing the Link section of this video that the most wonderful solution dawned on me. When Link is going through Ganon's castle, there's a pretty amazing song playing in the background, and when Link eventually finds Ganondorf's throne room, it is revealed that the one tickling the ivory keys is Ganondorf himself. The King of Evil, the King of Thieves, the Demon King, he's got a lot of king names, is actually goated on the organ? And this isn't some meta joke, or some sort of illusion, or literally any sort of stretching of the situation. That motherfucker is actually just jamming away while Link is fighting for the fate of humanity. This is maybe the most important encounter of his entire life, and he's just playing away. And you know what? In Baldur's Gate 3, there is a class that would totally fit this musical inclination of Ganon's, and it would also offer him plenty of effective physical options, including an extra attack, as well as a full caster build. That class, of course, is the Bard, and the subclass is the College of Swords. As a College of Swords Bard, Ganondorf has the best of both worlds, and while the organ isn't an available instrument in Baldur's Gate 3, I'm gonna make an exception and allow Ganondorf to summon an organ whenever and wherever the hell he pleases, because he is simply too good on that thing to take it away from him. I agree that this is obviously a silly option to land on, but you have heard my gripes with the other classes, and while I think this is a bit over the top, it still feels more right to me than the other classes did. The Bard, while generally being seen as a happy-go-lucky class, does have access to the darker magic that Ganondorf should be able to do. But look, I have lingered on the class selection for way too long, so let's wrap up some of the nerd stuff so that we can get into how a villain is going to fare in Faerun instead of a hero. Well, like how I made Link a half-elf, I am making Ganondorf a tiefling. He's the Demon King after all, and while I know that there is a big difference between devils and demons in the Forgotten Realms, trust me, I won't make that mistake again, it still feels like it would be a bummer to pass up on exploiting Ganon's innate darkness. He can be an Asmodeus tiefling, considering Asmodeus is basically the Devil King and Ganon is, well, you know by now. His background is the noble, could definitely make soldier work too, but Ganon's political history seems too important to his success for me to ignore, and his stats are fairly straightforward, but you may have noticed that his physical stats are a bit high. There's one very good reason for that, and that reason is the Triforce of Power. While Ganon wasn't able to get the full Triforce when he entered the Sacred Realm, he did manage to leave with a third of it, and I would argue that this third is, well, the most powerful. Ganon is able to collapse his entire big-ass castle in very little time. And then he rises from the rubble of that castle, still on his feet after all that, and uses the Triforce of Power one last time to transform into his big old demon form. And obviously, I don't think it would be fair to give him the ability to do that while he is getting settled into his new surroundings, but I do think we need to represent this piece of the Triforce in some way, and that way is going to be by buffing his stats a bit. But what we really care about is, who does he get along with? Well, Lae'zel is going to be incredibly into him. That is just an undeniable truth. Whether or not he gives a shit about her is up for debate, but the relationship would be toxic, probably. I could see Astarion and Shadowheart also following him, but like Lae'zel being a bad influence for Arthur, I think Ganon would be a bad influence for these two. Gale, Will, Karlach, Halsin, Jaheira, and Minsk are all obviously completely out of the equation. In fact, I wouldn't even be too too surprised if some of these characters, like Will and Karlach, go down swinging on Ganondorf because he's so obviously evil. But Ganondorf's most obvious ally is Minthara. Minthara is fucking evil, and I love her for that, but that girl is certifiably nuts. It's safe to say that Ganon likely sides with the goblins, smashes Minthara, makes his way to the Shadow-Cursed lands, and then meets his greatest challenge, or really only challenge thus far, Ketheric Thorm. Ganondorf isn't stupid, and so I think that potentially the most terrible outcome might be the most likely. The outcome where Ganondorf plays along with Ketheric, he learns about Ketheric's immortality and its true source, Dame Aelin, and this is where the Triforce of Power comes back into play. Now, Zelda nerds, I'm gonna need your help here. Is the Triforce of Power a strong enough conduit, or prison maybe, for Ganondorf to transfer Dame Aelin into to siphon her immortality like Ketheric does? Because given that it's one of the most powerful artifacts in the entirety of the Zelda verse, and given that Ganondorf has incredible magic prowess and talent, and that he is literally seeing somebody's immortality be siphoned like this, I wouldn't be surprised at all if Ganondorf found a way to snatch Aelin up and trap her within the Triforce of Power, which at the moment is linked pretty firmly to Ganon. To take it, you'd have to kill him, and now to kill him, you would have to take it. And so that's it. This is the end of Faerun. I mean, I genuinely, I don't know if he'd be beatable at this point, especially after slaughtering Ketheric, Gortash, and Orin, getting their nether stones, and taking over the Netherbrain. He is now immortal and in control of the most dangerous and powerful army in the universe. The only hope I think that exists at this point is the Emperor, but that's assuming Ganondorf even has the artifact with him and isn't just using the Triforce of Power to prevent himself from transforming into a Mind Flayer. But if the Emperor could somehow, stop using Orpheus's powers and get Ganondorf to transform into a Mind Flayer, then maybe there's some hope. But the potentially bigger problem there then is that Mind Flayer Ganondorf has the Triforce of Power still and goes and gives it to the Netherbrain, and now the Netherbrain has the Crown of Karsus and the Triforce of Power. That arguably is an even worse outcome. But maybe the worst one I can think of is Ganondorf fucking slays Orin, and then Ball, the ambitious little bugger he is, swoops in and offers the position of being his chosen to Ganon. Now, whether Ganon would accept something like that is hard to say, but to get a leg up, it feels like Ganondorf might do just about anything. So then that would mean Ganondorf is the chosen of Ball, and he has the Triforce of Power, and eventually has control over the Netherbrain, and can presumably take the form of the Slayer and his Ganon demon form. And I'm gonna need somebody, one of you talented people at home, to draw what it would look like if Ganon took the form of Demon Ganon and combined that with the Ball Slayer form, because that just sounds so cool. But, well, it would be cool, but it would be really bad and really evil. So, yeah, there's no good ending here. Ganondorf, he's just too much. It's a GG's for Faerun, for Baldur's Gate 3, for everybody here. So let's just move on to the next character. Moving on to our next character, though, not to be gross, but things have been a veritable sausage fest so far. And so let's mix things up a little bit by talking about one of my favorite ladies in all of gaming, a character from a very recent absolute banger, Mael from Expedition 33. Look, there are gonna be lots of Expedition 33 spoilers ahead. I'm not gonna preface it every time I say something about it, so if you want to skip to the last character to avoid spoilers for that game, I totally get it. You should go play it if you haven't, but otherwise, I think Mael might be the easiest character to place into this universe. And to do so, let's actually start with the end of Expedition 33, specifically the ending where you choose to side with Verso and destroy the canvas. Alicia is forced out and back into her normal, quite miserable life, and so with that over, let's say Alicia is looking for a bit of comfort, and she goes and paints her own world, and hell, maybe she's inspired by the actual real world Forgotten Forgotten Realms books and lore and shit like that, or maybe Baldur's Gate 3, the video game, exists in her world and she straight up just paints herself there. It's not a perfect explanation, I know that, but I think it's just the one that makes the most sense, and we're talking video game magic here, so. But Mael is here, and here are her stats. And I don't think it really gives away the class and subclass that I've given to her yet, but I'm actually going to start by telling you one that I passed up on, and that is the Battle Master Fighter. Mael has all sorts of abilities and skills and attacks and maneuvers in her game, so it felt like this class was perfect for her, but the reason I decided ultimately to pass on it is because A, we've already got a champion fighter, and B, an arcane archer, and C, fighter class might come up one more time in this video before it's all over, so let's try something else that works for her, and that class is the rogue class with the swashbuckler subclass. Now, when I think of Mael, I don't immediately think of a rogue, but the cool thing about the swashbuckler is that it is not a very sneaky class, or it doesn't have to be, and you also don't have to be a pirate to be a swashbuckler. There's nothing in the rules that says the dog can't play basketball. The swashbuckler description fits Mael really well. You live and breathe the art of the blade, excelling in single combat thanks to your quick feet and wits. That is perfect. Not to mention that to use a sneak attack as a swashbuckler, you don't actually need to have sneaky advantage on your enemy, so as long as you just don't have disadvantage, you can walk right up and stab somebody. Mael is famously one of, if not the hardest hitting characters in her game, so this feels perfect. I have also gone ahead and done my best to adapt her stance mechanic to fit into Baldur's Gate 3. Each stance has a cost, and each stance has an effect. Frankly, this might be a little overpowered, but I still think it's kind of fun, even if it's not totally fair. But let's stop and answer a few of those questions I established earlier, starting with, of course, what would her guardian be like? Well, if we're using the scenario where Alicia painted this world for herself but doesn't actually remember her real life, then she might just have Verso hiding somewhere really deep inside of her mind somewhere, and the Emperor, if he could see that, would definitely take the form of Verso to bring her some sort of natural comfort, even if she's not aware of why she feels that. So, you know, I think it would be relatively easy for the Emperor to get Mael to do whatever he wants her to do. But now for the real fun part, Mael's interactions with the gang. Well, before you comment it, who am I kidding? You probably already did, but yes, it would be funny to see her and Shadowheart talk. No, but really, I think her and Shadowheart might have a pretty tight relationship because Shadowheart seems a bit healed by seeing Will be so kind to the kids in the Grove, and so she might see Mael as an opportunity to raise somebody who is younger up in a way that she wasn't when she was a kid. Though I can't say the same for Lae'zel or Astarion. Lae'zel would likely see Mael as a worthless child, and Astarion would probably be too creepy for Mael to handle. Not creepy in a creepy way, just creepy in a clearly ominous and weird dude sort of way, and I don't see her putting up with his false niceties for all that long. Obviously though, she'd get along great with Karlach and Will. I could even see Will becoming her sort of Gustav, her Verso, her male older mentor who helps guide her on her journey. And she'd also likely be comfortable with Gale. I think Gale is a pretty safe bet here. I'm not too worried about him. She'd probably like Halsin, she'd definitely like Jaheira and Minsk, and obviously she wouldn't get along with Minthara. But arguably then, the most important question we could ask for each character is the one we will end on for her, and that is her journey through the story of Baldur's Gate 3 successful? And I would say almost definitely, and it's kind of for different reasons than everybody else thus far. She would build deep and meaningful relationships in a way that I don't know if Arthur would, I don't know if Link could, and Ganondorf wouldn't want to. With her deep connections, with her inherent talent, I think Mael absolutely makes it to the end of the game. She slays the Netherbrain, and at the end of the day is successful. If I had to actually select a very specific ending for her, I could see her going to Avernus with Will and Karlach and helping Karlach get that fucking death trap out of her chest. Though she'd need a cool nickname like Will, like how he's the Blade of Avernus. We'll have to think of something for her. But yeah, all in all, Mael, I think she absolutely has this in the bag. But ladies and gentlemen, it is time. Time for the dopest, coolest, most W aura Spartan of them all. Okay, I'm sorry, I can't start this entry off with the most W aura. I'm like 30. The final character we will discuss definitely belongs on the badass video game dude Mount Rushmore, the legendary savior of humanity, deemed a demon by an entire alien race, Spartan John 117, Master Chief. Now, this video is getting to be pretty damn long, and I know I have gotta be tired of editing at this point, so I will get right down to business. I am pulling Master Chief from his little nappy time that he has between Halo 3 and 4. Just kind of feels like there's a good bit of downtime there. But remember in the section with Link where I said we would talk about Na'vi and why she doesn't come with him? Well, that is because we are going to pair up Master Chief and Cortana, and I didn't want to do that trope twice. Also, Cortana and Master Chief are physically linked because she is like in a chip in his suit, so he comes with her for sure. In fact, actually, that suit might be a good place to start. Named Mjolnir after Thor's legendary hammer, Master Chief's armor enhances his already insane stats. And so, because of this, and because he has Cortana, I have given him no unique traits. But his stats are skewed to be pretty fucking strong. I mean, hell, with the suit, with his actual super soldier physical augmentations, it just is what makes sense. And to represent Cortana's presence, he gets a raw boost to his IQ while she's around. We'll talk about her more in a second, but let's finish up the Mjolnir conversation. Frankly, this armor should give him like an AC of 22 or 23, but that would be a messed up thing to do considering the highest armor class a character can naturally obtain from literal armor alone is from the Helldusk armor, which, is forged in the Hells and has an AC of 21. He survived a fall from space and just was fine. And while he gets this pretty insane AC, I think he also deserves a boost to his movement speed considering he has been recorded to run at 65 miles an hour. Master Chief is a physical beast, an absolute unit, but his most powerful advantage just might be his cute little blue friend Cortana.
Sleep well?
No thanks to your driving, yes.
So you did miss me.
Cortana is an AI. Boo, I know, but this was, back before AI was destroying the planet, so she's cool. The reason I say she's such a big asset is because she can gather information very quickly. Not to mention that she can then disseminate that information to the Chief more effectively than potentially anyone else in the universe. The bond these two share is beautiful, but again, this video's not long enough to keep talking about that.
You know me. When I make a promise.
You keep it. I do know how to pick 'em.
Lucky me.
To give you an example of how this could be huge for Chief's success, let's just look at how much information could be gathered just before leaving the Nautiloid. There are, I believe, 10 rune slates aboard the ship, and they each teach some things about either Faerun as a whole or about the Illithid themselves. Yes, the information in these runes can be flashed into the player character's mind, but I think it's safe to say that this doesn't really hold the weight that it should, and that's likely because it was written for and or by a higher form of intelligence to be able to interpret, like the Mind Flayers. If Chief was able to find each of these rune slates, then him and Cortana might, by the end of the time in the Nautiloid, have a full understanding of where they are, what's going on, and what needs to be done next, all within the first few minutes of their journey. But one more upside Cortana could give Master Chief is by understanding magic. Master Chief has seen a lot, but similar to Arthur Morgan, magic is likely a bit above his pay grade, but it is not above Cortana's, and so let me reveal to you the class I have chosen for Master Chief, the Eldritch Knight. Yes, another fighter subclass, shocker, but hear me out. Without Cortana, I would make Master Chief a Battlemaster fighter, obviously. But the description for the Eldritch Knight subclass reads, you are a warrior of spell and sword, weaving incantations that supplement your extensive martial expertise. If you just replaced, like, spell and sword with gun and grenade, then that's kind of already what Master Chief does in his games. He supplements his martial expertise with weapons. And so, think about it, with a little help from Cortana, he could treat magic like he treats weapons. I've got quite the list of examples. I won't give them all because it's going to go on for way too long, but here are just a few. The Thunder Wave spell could act sort of like how the Gravity Hammer does, or the Booming Blade cantrip could be like the Energy Sword, or Bursting Sinew and those spiky brute grenades, or Scorching Rays and the Battle Rifle, Invisibility and Camouflage, homage. Surely these are enough examples to get you excited about the idea of Master Chief just inventing magical weapons, right? Like, no guns in this world, guess I'd better make some. I don't know, it's perfect to me. But as far as his quest through Baldur's Gate 3 goes, it's hard to say how he would do with the companions.
Did you put a fucking mod in this? No.
I think we can safely say he'd be cool with the good guys and not so cool with the bad guys. He's a pretty simple dude.
Did you put a fucking mod in this? No.
Although, and I'm requesting art once again, I had this really funny image in my head of Master Chief finding Astarion, and you know how Astarion tries to pull the player to the ground and put a knife to their neck and all that. Well, I just picture Astarion jumping onto Chief's back and trying to threaten him, and Master Chief is just utterly baffled at Astarion's bravado, and Cortana is probably trying not to laugh. I don't know. The character interactions between some of these characters would be amazing. And regardless of whether he does it alone or travels with the others, I genuinely don't think he would have any trouble making his way through the story. Master Chief is unstoppable. Trust me, dude. Entire alien races have tried to stop him, and it just ain't gonna happen until he is damn good and ready.
Boo.
The Illithid threat does not have shit on the Flood, so this would just be one more problem that the big man and his little lady would have to solve, and you can bet your ass that they would solve it. But folks at home, we have done it. And of course, like I said at the beginning of the video, please leave a like and subscribe. It helps a lot. And also a comment to let me know what I probably have said wrong in this video, because there was a lot. And I'm sure you disagree with something I said, and that's okay. I mean, this is all hypothetical. Everything here is made up. The games are made up, everything's made up. But yeah, that's it for me, gang. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope to see you all next time. GG's, everybody.